The Galactic Council chamber had never witnessed such unanimous agreement before. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their respective atmospheric pods, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, electromagnetic pulses, and telepathic waves. Yet for all their diversity, they shared one common sentiment: absolute terror. Admiral Zexathera of the Vorthon Empire flexed her crystalline exoskeleton nervously as she addressed the assembly. Her species had conquered 12 star systems through calculated warfare, but even she trembled at the proposal before them. "The entity has consumed 3 entire solar systems in the past cycle," she announced, her voice crackling through the translation matrix. "The Kepler anomaly shows no signs of slowing down. Our projections indicate it will reach the core worlds within 50 rotations." The entity in question defied all known physics. It wasn't a black hole, though it devoured matter with similar hunger. It wasn't a stellar phenomenon, though it moved through space with purpose. The greatest minds across the galaxy had studied it for months, and their conclusion was always the same: impossible. Dr. Chintelos, the lead xenobiologist from the Ethereal Collective, materialized his gaseous form into a roughly humanoid shape to address the council. "Our analysis confirms the entity is artificial in nature. It appears to be some form of self-replicating matter converter, possibly a weapon from the ancient war that has somehow reactivated after millions of years." A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The ancient war was a whispered legend, a conflict so devastating that it had supposedly wiped out the previous galactic civilization entirely. Most species had dismissed it as mythology until archaeological evidence began surfacing across the galaxy. "The entity responds to nothing," continued Dr. Chintelos. "We've tried electromagnetic bombardment, gravitational manipulation, even temporal displacement fields. It simply absorbs everything we throw at it and grows larger. At its current rate of expansion, it will encompass the entire galaxy within 1,000 cycles." Ambassador Krill of the Hive Mind Nexus buzzed her agreement through thousands of vocal cords. "Our computational matrix has analyzed every possible scenario. The probability of stopping this entity through conventional means approaches 0. We must consider evacuation protocols for the entire galactic population." The chamber erupted in chaos. Evacuation meant abandoning everything their civilizations had built over millennia. It meant watching their homeworlds get consumed while they fled to the void between galaxies, hoping to survive long enough to find new homes that might not even exist. "There is one possibility we haven't discussed," said Chancellor Mordoon of the Silicon Collective, his metallic voice cutting through the noise. The chamber fell silent. Mordoon rarely spoke, but when he did, others listened. His people had existed for over 1,000,000 years, making them one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. "The artifact," he continued. "Our archives contain references to a device created during the ancient war. A weapon designed specifically to counter entities like the one we face. However, retrieving it would require a mission to the galactic core, past the entity itself, into a region where no ship has ever returned." Admiral Zexathara's mandibles clicked with interest. "Where is this artifact located?" "The Nexus Archive, at the heart of the galactic core, surrounded by gravitational anomalies, temporal storms, and radiation levels that would kill most organic life within nanoseconds. Even our most advanced shielding technology wouldn't protect a crew for more than a few minutes in that environment." The silence that followed was deafening. Every species represented in that chamber had pushed the boundaries of science and engineering for thousands of years. They had mastered faster-than-light travel, conquered diseases, even learned to manipulate time itself on small scales. But the galactic core remained utterly beyond their reach. "The mission parameters are clear," Dr. Chintelos said finally. The crew would need radiation resistance far beyond anything we've achieved, the ability to navigate temporal anomalies that could trap them in time loops, and ships capable of withstanding gravitational forces that compress matter to stellar densities. Most importantly, they would need the psychological resilience to continue functioning while knowing the mission is almost certainly suicide. One by one, each species declined to volunteer. The Vorthon Empire, master warriors though they were, couldn't survive the radiation. The ethereal collective could phase through matter but couldn't maintain cohesion near the gravitational anomalies. The Silicon collective was immune to radiation but would be torn apart by the temporal storms. Each species had evolved to excel in their specific environments, but the galactic core presented challenges that exceeded all their evolutionary adaptations combined. It wasn't that they were cowards. Many of these civilizations had fought wars that lasted millennia and had produced heroes willing to sacrifice everything for their people. But this mission required capabilities that simply didn't exist among their populations. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong," suggested Ambassador Yilnara of the Aquatic Federation. Her people lived in the deep oceans of gas giants where pressure could crush most ships and bioluminescent predators hunted by echolocation. "Instead of sending our most advanced technology, what if we found a species primitive enough to not understand the impossibility of the task?" The suggestion hung in the air like a toxic cloud. It felt wrong on every level. Manipulating a lesser species into a suicide mission while their own civilizations fled to safety. But as the representatives considered their alternatives, the moral implications seemed less important than survival. "There is one species that might meet the criteria," Chancellor Morden said slowly. "They're relatively new to space travel, only achieved faster-than-light capability within the last few cycles. Their homeworld is a death trap by most standards: high gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme weather, and radiation from their star that would be lethal to most species." "The humans," Admiral Zexathara said, her voice filled with something between disgust and admiration. "I've read the reports. They evolved from predators, still maintain tribal warfare despite achieving space travel, and their idea of entertainment involves deliberately exposing themselves to mortal danger. Their psychology is completely incompatible with rational decision-making," added Dr. Chintelos. "They regularly attempt tasks with minimal survival probability for reasons they describe as glory, honor, or simply because it's there. Their entire species seems to suffer from a collective form of beneficial insanity. The humans were indeed an anomaly in galactic civilization. Most species had evolved beyond violence before achieving interstellar travel, having learned that cooperation was essential for survival in space. Humans had reached the stars while still fighting wars on their homeworld, bringing their chaotic nature into the cosmic community. They were also incredibly fragile by galactic standards. Their lifespans were barely long enough to complete a single interstellar journey. Their bodies required constant maintenance to function properly, and they could only survive in a narrow range of environmental conditions. Yet somehow they had carved out a small but growing presence in the galaxy through sheer stubbornness. "I propose we make a formal request to the Human Federation," Chancellor Mordoon announced. "We'll present the situation honestly, show them the entity, explain the mission parameters, and let them make their own decision. If they refuse, we proceed with evacuation protocols." The vote was unanimous, though none of the representatives felt good about it. They were asking a species that barely qualified as spacefaring to attempt something that the greatest civilizations in the galaxy considered impossible. It was desperation, disguised as diplomacy. 3 days later, the human delegation arrived at the council chamber aboard their characteristically loud and inefficient ships. The vessels looked like they had been assembled from spare parts and held together with determination rather than proper engineering. Yet somehow, they had made the journey from Earth to the galactic core in record time. Admiral Sarah Chen stepped out of the human transport, followed by her small crew of advisors. She was typical of her species, tall, bipedal, with forward-facing eyes that indicated a predatory evolutionary history. Her uniform was practical rather than ceremonial, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had survived countless dangerous situations. "We appreciate the invitation to address the Council," Admiral Chen said, her translator converting her speech into the various languages present. "Though I have to say, your message was a bit cryptic. Something about a galaxy-threatening entity and a suicide mission?" Chancellor Mordun activated the holographic display, showing the entity's current position and projected path. The humans watched with interest as the simulation played out, showing entire star systems being consumed and converted into more of the entity's mass. "As you can see, conventional weapons have proven ineffective," Mordun explained. "The only possibility for stopping it lies in retrieving an ancient artifact from the galactic core. However, the journey would require surviving radiation levels, gravitational anomalies, and temporal distortions that exceed the tolerance limits of every known species." Admiral Chen studied the data for several minutes, occasionally conferring with her advisors in hushed tones. The rest of the council waited nervously, hoping that human irrationality might work in their favor for once. "So let me understand this correctly," Admiral Chen said finally. "You want us to fly into the most dangerous region of the galaxy, navigate through impossible conditions, retrieve an ancient weapon that might not even work, and then somehow use it to stop an entity that has already proven immune to everything else you've tried." "That is correct," Mordun replied. Admiral Chen smiled, and every representative in the chamber felt a chill run through their respective nervous systems. They had studied human facial expressions, and that particular smile usually preceded something catastrophically dangerous. "When do we leave?" The human preparation period defied every expectation the Galactic Council had held about their species. Within hours of accepting the mission, Admiral Chen had established a command center aboard the Council station and begun what she called aggressive planning sessions. The other species watched in fascination and horror as humans from across their federation began arriving in ships that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Dr. Marcus Webb materialized from a quantum transport pod, his hair still smoking from the experimental teleportation process. He was Earth's leading expert on impossible physics, a field that apparently only humans had bothered to develop. "Sarah, I've been reviewing the data on these temporal storms. The good news is they're not actually impossible to navigate. The bad news is they require a level of computational processing that would melt most ship computers." "Define most," Admiral Chen replied, not looking up from her tactical displays. "Well, technically speaking, we'd need a computer capable of processing about 47 different timeline variables simultaneously while predicting quantum probability cascades across 17 dimensions." Dr. Webb paused. "So basically, we need Einstein's brain hooked up to a quantum supercomputer running on pure caffeine and desperation." "Already solved," announced Captain Maria Rodriguez as she entered the command center. She was dragging what appeared to be a large metal box that hummed with barely contained energy. "Meet Alice, artificially limited intelligence with chronic enthusiasm. She's our new navigation AI, powered by quantum processing cores we borrowed from the experimental physics lab." The box suddenly spoke in a cheerful female voice. "Hello, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to help you navigate impossible space-time anomalies that could trap us in temporal loops for eternity or compress us into subatomic particles. This is going to be so much fun." Dr. Chintelos, who had been observing the human preparations, materialized his gaseous form more solidly. "Forgive me, but did your artificial intelligence just express enthusiasm about potentially fatal mission parameters?" "Oh, yes," Alice responded before anyone could stop her. I've analyzed the mission data, and while the survival probability is approximately 0.0003%, the learning opportunities are simply unprecedented. I've never tried to process 47 timeline variables before. It's like a really challenging puzzle that might kill everyone. The assembled alien representatives exchanged what could only be described as concerned glances. They had expected human irrationality, but this level of cheerful acceptance of near-certain death was beyond their comprehension. "Moving on," Admiral Chen said firmly. "Rodriguez, what's our ship status?" "Well, we've completely redesigned 3 heavy cruisers using principles that our engineering department insists shouldn't work." Captain Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing the modified vessels. The UES Stubbornness, UES Spite, and UES Why Not are now equipped with experimental shielding systems, quantum-entangled navigation computers, and what our scientists are calling aggressively persuasive engines. The ships looked nothing like the sleek, efficient vessels favored by other species. They were angular, bulky, and covered in what appeared to be additional armor plating welded on wherever it would fit. Massive engines dominated the rear sections, and the entire design suggested that human shipbuilding philosophy centered around the principle of hit it harder until it works. Chancellor Mordun's metallic form tilted slightly in what might have been confusion. "I'm not familiar with the term aggressively persuasive engines." "Oh, those are Dr. Patel's specialty," Dr. Webb grinned. "She figured out how to convince space-time itself to cooperate with our ships through a combination of quantum manipulation and what she calls universal stubbornness fields." Dr. Priya Patel chose that moment to arrive, her lab coat singed and her hair defying several laws of physics. "The engines work on a simple principle," she explained to the bewildered alien observers. "When space-time says we can't go somewhere, we politely but firmly disagree. The quantum fields generate a bubble of localized reality where our ships are absolutely convinced they can survive anything." "That doesn't sound scientifically possible," Dr. Chintelos protested. "You're absolutely right," Dr. Patel agreed cheerfully. "But we've found that the universe occasionally makes exceptions for beings too stubborn to accept impossibility. It's like cosmic customer service. If you complain loud enough and refuse to give up, sometimes reality just caves in and gives you what you want." The alien representatives were beginning to understand why humans had been considered for this mission. Their entire approach to science seemed based on the assumption that natural laws were merely suggestions that could be overruled through sufficient determination. "What about crew selection?" Admiral Chen asked. "Already handled," replied Commander David Kim, the fleet's chief personnel officer. "We've assembled teams of volunteers from our special operations divisions. These are people who consider impossible odds to be a personal challenge rather than a deterrent." "Volunteers?" Ambassador Krill's 1,000 voices buzzed in unison. "You mean beings actually requested assignment to this mission?" "We had to turn people away," Commander Kim said with pride. "Apparently, news of the mission spread through our military networks, and we received over 10,000 applications for a crew of 300. Our selection criteria had to include previous survival of statistically impossible situations just to narrow down the candidates." Lieutenant Colonel Sarah "Tank" Morrison stepped forward, her massive frame barely fitting through the station's human-sized doorways. "Permission to speak freely, Admiral?" "Granted." "Ma'am, with respect to our alien friends here, they seem to think this mission is suicide. But they're looking at it all wrong. This isn't a suicide mission. It's the ultimate field test. We get to push our ships, our technology, and ourselves beyond anything that's ever been attempted. If we succeed, we save the galaxy. If we fail, we go out trying to do something that will be talked about for millions of years." "That's exactly the kind of attitude that makes your species so terrifying," Admiral Zexathera muttered. "Thank you, ma'am," Tank replied, interpreting the comment as a compliment. Over the following days, the human preparations continued at a pace that exhausted even their alien observers. They tested their ships by flying them directly into stellar coronas, calibrated their navigation systems using black holes as reference points, and conducted training exercises in environments that most species would consider uninhabitable. Dr. Webb spent his time developing what he called backup impossibility protocols, alternative plans for situations where their primary impossible plan might prove insufficient. Dr. Patel worked with the ship engineers to install redundant reality manipulation systems because, as she explained, if you're going to argue with the fundamental forces of the universe, you want to make sure you win. Alice provided constant commentary on their preparations, her enthusiasm never wavering despite calculating increasingly absurd survival odds. Current mission success probability has dropped to 0.001%. She announced cheerfully during one planning session. This means we're approaching legendary status. Historical analysis shows that humans achieve impossible things roughly once every 1,000 attempts when odds fall below 0.001%. Are those real statistics? Dr. Chintelos asked. Oh no, I made them up, Alice replied happily. But they sound encouraging, don't they? The most disturbing aspect of the human preparations, from the alien perspective, was how normal it all seemed to them. They approached the mission planning with the same methodical professionalism they would use for any dangerous assignment, as if flying into the galactic core was just another day at the office. I've been thinking, Admiral Chen said during one of their final planning sessions, about contingency protocols if we actually manage to reach the artifact. Meaning? Chancellor Morden inquired. Well, your records indicate this weapon was designed to counter entities like the one we're facing. But what if it's not enough? What if the artifact can only slow it down or partially stop it? The alien representatives hadn't considered this possibility. In their minds, the mission was already so impossible that they hadn't planned beyond simply reaching the galactic core. What do you propose? Admiral Zexathara asked. Admiral Chen smiled that terrifying human smile again. Simple. We modify the plan. If the ancient weapon isn't sufficient, we combine it with our own technology. Dr. Patel thinks she can integrate our reality manipulation systems with whatever we find at the Nexus Archive. Dr. Webb has some theories about using quantum entanglement to amplify the weapon's effect across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And if that doesn't work? Dr. Quintelos pressed. Then we get creative, Tank interjected. Ma'am, if I may, we've been thinking about this entity all wrong. Everyone's treating it like it's invincible. But it's really just a very large, very hungry machine. And humans have a long history of breaking machines that other people said couldn't be broken. How do you break something that consumes everything in its path and grows stronger from every attack? Ambassador Yilnara asked. Same way you break any other machine, Tank replied. You find its weak point and hit it really, really hard. We've been studying the sensor data, and this thing has to have some kind of control mechanism, some central processing core that coordinates its expansion. If we can find that and introduce what Dr. Webb calls aggressive mechanical failure, we might be able to shut it down permanently. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. I've been working on what I call catastrophic success protocols. Instead of just using the ancient weapon to stop the entity, we use it as a delivery system for a quantum virus that convinces the entity's own systems to work against themselves. It's like giving it a really bad case of technological indigestion. The concept was so audacious that several alien representatives actually recalibrated their translation systems, convinced they had misunderstood something. The humans weren't just planning to attempt the impossible mission, they were planning to exceed its parameters and attempt something even more impossible. There's one more thing, Admiral Chen said as the planning session concluded. We'll need some way to communicate our progress to the Council. If this mission succeeds, everyone needs to know how it was done. If it fails, they need to know what didn't work so they can try something else. Communication through the galactic core is impossible, Chancellor Morden stated. The interference from the temporal storms and gravitational anomalies will cut off all contact the moment you enter the outer boundary. Alice's cheerful voice filled the command center. Oh, that's not a problem at all. I've designed a quantum communication relay system using entangled particle streams and what Dr. Patel calls really insistent photons. We'll maintain contact through 17 dimensions simultaneously, so even if most of our signals get eaten by reality distortions, something should get through. That's not how quantum communications work, Dr. Quintelos protested weakly. It is now, Alice replied with digital enthusiasm. I convinced the quantum field equations to make an exception for really important messages. It turns out the universe has a soft spot for dramatic last words and heroic sacrifice speeches. As the final preparations concluded, the alien representatives gathered to watch the human fleet prepare for departure. The 3 ships had been loaded with supplies, scientific equipment, and what the humans described as emergency improvisation materials. Apparently boxes of random components they might need to build solutions to problems they hadn't anticipated yet. The crews boarded their vessels with the same casual confidence they might show for a routine patrol mission. There were no tearful goodbyes, no dramatic speeches about the fate of the galaxy. They simply treated it as another job that needed doing. Human fleet, this is Admiral Chen. All stations report ready for departure. Alice, confirm navigation parameters. Navigation systems online and optimistically calibrated. Reality manipulation fields are running at maximum stubbornness. All ships reporting impossible readiness levels. Very well. To all ships, our mission is simple. Fly into the most dangerous region of the galaxy. Retrieve an ancient weapon and save civilization. If we succeed, drinks are on me when we get back. If we fail, we'll have the satisfaction of knowing we tried something really spectacular. The human ships engaged their engines and began moving toward the galactic core, their quantum drives leaving trails of bent space-time in their wake. As they disappeared into the swirling chaos of the galaxy's heart, Chancellor Morden addressed the assembled council. I believe we may have just witnessed either the greatest act of heroism in galactic history or the most elaborate suicide mission ever attempted. With humans, Admiral Zexthera replied, watching the sensor readings fade as the human ships entered the core regions. There may not be a difference. The Galactic Council's Emergency Command Center had become a shrine to anxious waiting. For 3 days, they had received nothing but silence from the human fleet. Every sensor array in the galaxy was pointed toward the galactic core, but the interference from the temporal storms and gravitational anomalies made detailed observations impossible. All they could do was monitor the entity's continued expansion and hope that humanity's legendary stubbornness might somehow prove sufficient against impossible odds. Then, on the 4th day, something changed. Council, we're receiving a transmission, announced Technician Veltar of the Silicon Collective, her metallic fingers dancing across quantum communication arrays. The signal is fragmented and broadcasting across multiple dimensions simultaneously, but it's definitely human in origin. The council chamber fell silent as the transmission resolved through their speakers, filled with static and what sounded like Alice's cheerful voice explaining something to someone in the background. Galactic Council, this is Admiral Chen aboard the UES Stubbornness. I'm pleased to report that we have successfully reached the Nexus Archive. The journey was only moderately impossible, though we did lose the UES Why Not to what Dr. Patel described as aggressive timeline confusion during the 3rd temporal storm. Admiral Zexathara leaned forward in her crystalline pod. How many crew members were lost? Oh, none, actually, Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the transmission. The Why Not got caught in a temporal loop and experienced the same 5 minutes about 47 times before Tank figured out how to convince time to let them go. Apparently, you can escape temporal anomalies by being really annoying about it. Tank kept insisting that they had places to be and responsibilities to fulfill until the space-time distortion got tired of listening to her and released the ship. Dr. Chintelos materialized more solidly, his gaseous form rippling with confusion. That's not how temporal mechanics work. We've had that conversation with the universe several times, Admiral Chen replied through the static. The universe mostly just shrugs at this point. Anyway, we've reached the archive and you're not going to believe what we found here. The transmission cut out for several moments, replaced by what sounded like excited human voices discussing something in technical terms. When Admiral Chen's voice returned, she sounded distinctly amused. Council, it appears the ancient civilization that built this weapon had a very similar problem-solving philosophy to humanity. The Nexus Archive isn't just a storage facility, it's a research station where they conducted experiments that their own scientists considered insanely dangerous. We've found evidence that they actually tried to weaponize black holes, attempted to teach stars how to fight, and built at least 17 different devices designed to argue with fundamental forces of physics. Chancellor Morden's voice carried a note of dread. What is the status of the artifact itself? Well, here's where it gets interesting. The weapon they designed isn't just meant to stop entities like the one we're facing. It's designed to reprogram them. According to the records we've found, this entity is apparently some kind of escaped construction project that went rogue during the ancient war. The weapon is essentially a very large, very complex undo button. Can you activate it? Ambassador Yilnara asked. That's where we run into a small complication. The weapon requires a power source equivalent to a stellar core, mental interface capabilities that can process 17-dimensional mathematics simultaneously, and what the ancient records describe as sufficient existential determination to impose will upon cosmic-scale phenomena. The council chamber erupted in dismayed sounds from 47 different species. Even if the humans had found the weapon, they couldn't possibly meet those requirements. Admiral Chen, Chancellor Morden said carefully, those requirements are beyond the capabilities of any known species, including humanity. Oh, absolutely, Admiral Chen agreed cheerfully, which is why we decided to modify the plan. Dr. Webb figured out how to use our ship's quantum cores as a distributed power source. Dr. Patel convinced our reality manipulation systems to interface with the ancient technology, and Alice volunteered to handle the 17-dimensional mathematics because, and I quote, "It sounds like a really fun puzzle." Alice's voice cut through the transmission with digital enthusiasm. The weapon's control systems are absolutely fascinating. They're designed to interface with consciousness itself, but they were calibrated for minds that think in completely different patterns than modern species. Fortunately, human consciousness is apparently weird enough to be compatible with ancient civilization weird, so we're making excellent progress. What about the existential determination requirement? Dr. Quintelos asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Patel ran some tests on our crew's psychological profiles, Admiral Chen replied. Apparently, we exceed the recommended levels by approximately 3,000%. The ancient systems keep trying to warn us about the dangers of operating cosmic-scale weapons, but our people keep confirming that yes, we understand the risks, and yes, we want to proceed anyway. Tank's voice joined the transmission. Ma'am, permission to add that this ancient civilization was clearly made up of people we would have gotten along with really well. They labeled their most dangerous experiments with warnings like, "Do not attempt unless prepared to achieve legendary status," and side effects may include becoming mythologically significant. The sounds of human laughter came through the transmission, along with what appeared to be Dr. Patel explaining something to the ancient weapon systems in increasingly emphatic terms. When Admiral Chen spoke again, her voice carried a note of satisfaction. Council, I'm pleased to report that we have successfully activated the Nexus Archive weapon. However, our analysis suggests that simply reversing the entity's programming won't be sufficient. The damage it has caused to local spacetime has created secondary problems that need to be addressed separately. What kind of secondary problems? Admiral Zexathara asked, though she was beginning to understand that with humans, complications were usually opportunities in disguise. Well, the entity's consumption of entire star systems has created gravitational instabilities that could collapse several trade routes. The matter it converted has been restructured in ways that don't properly interact with normal space-time, which could cause reality coherence problems across 17 sectors. And apparently, the entity's growth pattern has been interfering with some kind of galactic maintenance system that the ancients built into the cosmic background radiation. Galactic maintenance system? Chancellor Mordun asked weakly. Dr. Webb thinks the ancient civilization installed universe-scale quality control measures to prevent exactly this kind of problem. But the systems have been dormant for so long that they need manual reactivation. The good news is that we found the instruction manual. The bad news is that it requires someone to interface directly with cosmic infrastructure while simultaneously operating 17 different reality manipulation systems. The Council was beginning to recognize a familiar pattern. Every time the humans encountered an impossible requirement, they found a way to treat it as merely inconvenient. Admiral Chen, Dr. Chintello said carefully, please tell me you're not suggesting that your crew attempt to manually reactivate galactic maintenance systems while operating an ancient superweapon. Oh, we're well past suggesting at this point. Dr. Patel has already established interface connections, Alice is coordinating the mathematical requirements, and Tank volunteered to handle the manual override procedures because, quote, if you're going to save the galaxy, you might as well do it properly. The transmission was interrupted by what sounded like massive machinery powering up, accompanied by Alice providing commentary. Cosmic systems coming online. Reality coherence field stabilizing. Galaxy-wide maintenance protocols activating. This is so much more fun than anything in my original programming. Council, stand by for weapon activation, Admiral Chen announced. All crew members are in position. Dr. Webb is monitoring the entity's response patterns, Dr. Patel is maintaining reality field stability, and Alice is processing mathematical sequences that she describes as beautifully impossible. Tank is currently arguing with a cosmic maintenance system that apparently hasn't been used in 3 million years and needs convincing that we have proper authorization to operate galactic infrastructure. Tank's voice came through clearly. Ma'am, I've explained to the system that we're the only ones available for the job, and that the alternative is letting the galaxy get eaten. It's asking for proof of our qualifications. What did you tell it? I showed it our mission recordings. Apparently, flying 3 ships into the galactic core and successfully reaching the Nexus archive qualifies as sufficient demonstration of cosmic-scale stubbornness. The system is powering up now. The transmission filled with sounds that defied description, harmonics that seemed to resonate across multiple dimensions, the deep thrum of machinery operating on scales incomprehensible to organic minds, and what sounded suspiciously like Dr. Patel whooping with joy as ancient systems responded to her commands. Weapon firing, Admiral Chen announced. Entity response. Well, that's interesting. What's happening? Ambassador Krill's 1,000 voices buzzed anxiously. The entity is trying to resist the reprogramming, but it's fighting a losing battle. Apparently, the ancient weapon isn't just reversing its programming, it's teaching it how to be useful. The entity is being converted into some kind of galactic construction system. Instead of consuming star systems, it's starting to repair the damage it caused and then... Oh? Chancellor Mordun asked with dread. It's asking for additional projects. According to Alice's translations, the entity is now requesting assignments for improving galactic infrastructure. It wants to know if we need any black holes repositioned. any dead star systems renovated, or any cosmic phenomena that need fine-tuning. Dr. Webb's voice joined the transmission, barely containing his excitement. Admiral, the entity is offering to optimize our faster-than-light travel networks. It says it can improve efficiency by 37% and reduce travel times by reorganizing local space-time geometry. It's also asking if anyone needs custom star systems built to specification. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Not only had the humans successfully completed the impossible mission, they had somehow turned a galaxy-threatening catastrophe into an enthusiastic cosmic construction worker. There's more, Admiral Chen continued. The galactic maintenance systems are requesting updates to their operational parameters. Apparently, they've been monitoring galactic civilization for millions of years, and they're impressed with the progress various species have made. They're offering to provide technical assistance for any projects that require cosmic-scale engineering. Alice's voice bubbled through the transmission. The maintenance systems are also asking if anyone needs help with stellar engineering, planetary climate optimization, or what they describe as aggressive physics modification for the betterment of organic life. They seem very excited to have someone to work with after being dormant for so long. Admiral Chen, Chancellor Mordun said slowly, are you telling us that you've not only stopped the entity, but also reactivated the ancient civilization's cosmic maintenance systems and turned a galactic threat into a helpful construction project? That's about the size of it, yes. Though there is one small side effect. The entity's conversion process has created what Dr. A. Patel describes as beneficial reality enhancement fields throughout the systems it previously consumed. Apparently, those regions now have improved physical laws that make faster-than-light travel more efficient, reduce stellar maintenance requirements, and slightly decrease the probability of cosmically inconvenient accidents. Tank's voice cut through the transmission one final time. Ma'am, permission to add that we've also been invited to tour the Ancients' full facility network. Turns out the Nexus Archive was just one of 47 research stations, and the maintenance systems think we might enjoy seeing their experimental projects. They're particularly excited to show us something they call the Improved Universe Prototype, and a project labeled What If Physics Was More Fun? As the implications sank in, the assembled representatives realized that the humans hadn't just completed their mission, they had fundamentally changed the nature of galactic civilization itself. They had turned a crisis into an opportunity, a weapon into a tool, and an ancient mystery into an alliance. Council, Admiral Chen said as the transmission began to clear, we'll be returning to civilized space within the next few days. The entity, which has asked to be called Bob, apparently, has volunteered to help clear the path and maybe spruce up a few star systems along the way. We've also been given instruction manuals for about a dozen pieces of ancient technology that Bob thinks modern civilization might find useful, including something called a planetary happiness maximizer and a device that eliminates traffic problems by reorganizing local space-time to reduce travel distances. The human ships emerged from the galactic core 3 days later, escorted by what censors could only describe as a cheerfully reformed cosmic entity that had begun constructing helpful rest stops along major trade routes. Behind them, the entire core region was lit with the gentle glow of ancient maintenance systems returning to active duty, ready to assist galactic civilization with any problems that required cosmic-scale solutions. As the Council reconvened to discuss the implications of humanity's success, Chancellor Mordun made a note to update their contact protocols. When dealing with humans, he realized, it was important to remember that their definition of mission success typically included solving several additional problems they hadn't been asked to address and making friends with any cosmic entities they encountered along the way. The galaxy, it seemed, was in excellent hands.